One of the richest people in the world, Bill Gates, became a billionaire decades ago. But even after becoming one of the wealthiest people on the planet, he continued living far more simply than most people expected. And he's not the only one. Have you ever noticed how some of the wealthiest people often live surprisingly simple lives? Mark Zuckerberg became one of the youngest billionaires in history while wearing the same simple gray t-shirt almost every day. In fact, many of the people who quietly build the most wealth often look the least impressive from the outside, because most people assume that when someone becomes wealthy, their lifestyle must immediately become more extravagant, which raises an interesting question. Why do so many wealthy people behave this way? Many wealthy people quietly follow a completely different set of money rules, rules that most people never learn. And those quiet rules often shape someone's financial future far more than their income ever will. For most people, the path to wealth seems very straightforward. Study hard, get a good job, work consistently, earn more money every year. The assumption is simple. If your income keeps increasing, your financial life should naturally improve as well. And in the beginning, that belief often appears to be true. A raise means a nicer apartment. A promotion means a better car. A larger paycheck means a more comfortable lifestyle. Slowly, life begins to look more successful from the outside. Friends see progress. Family sees stability. And it feels like everything is moving in the right direction. But something subtle often happens during this process. Each improvement in income is quietly followed by an improvement in lifestyle. Expenses rise together with earnings. A slightly nicer home, a slightly newer car, a few more conveniences. None of these decisions seem dramatic on their own, but over time, they create a financial pattern that most people never question. A pattern where higher income doesn't actually create financial freedom. It simply creates a more expensive version of the same life. And that pattern is where most people unknowingly spend their entire working lives. The problem is that this pattern quietly locks people into a financial cycle they rarely notice. Because when income rises and lifestyle rises with it, something important never changes: the gap between what someone earns and what they actually keep. At first, the difference seems small. A nicer apartment might cost a little more each month. A newer car might add another payment. A few extra conveniences slowly become normal. None of these upgrades feel irresponsible. In fact, they often feel deserved. After all, if someone works harder and earns more, improving their lifestyle feels like the natural reward for that effort. But over time, this pattern creates something surprisingly powerful: a lifestyle that expands to match income almost perfectly. The paycheck grows, but the financial pressure stays exactly the same. The job still feels necessary. The next raise still feels important. And the idea of stepping away from work still feels impossible. When money becomes tighter, the solution seems obvious. Earn more, work more, push for the next promotion. But each increase in income often brings another increase in lifestyle. Without realizing it, many people slowly build a life that requires their income to continue forever. Not because they lack money, but because their lifestyle has quietly learned how to consume almost all of it. Interestingly, many wealthy people avoid this cycle almost entirely. Not because they earn dramatically more money than everyone else, and not because they follow complicated investment strategies, but because they quietly approach money very differently. While most people focus on increasing income, wealthy people tend to focus on something else: the structure of their financial life. They pay attention to the small decisions that quietly shape how money moves through their lives, how quickly they increase their lifestyle, how much of their income actually remains unspent, and which purchases truly improve their lives. Over time, these small decisions create a completely different financial trajectory, one where income doesn't automatically disappear into lifestyle, and where financial flexibility slowly begins to grow. Many wealthy individuals follow a set of simple but surprisingly powerful rules, rules that rarely look impressive from the outside, but quietly protect the one thing that eventually creates financial freedom. And once you begin to notice these rules, you start to see them everywhere. Rule 1. Imagine two people earning the same salary. Both make around $80,000 a year. From the outside, their lives look almost identical. They work similar jobs, they live in similar neighborhoods, and their paychecks arrive on the same schedule. But there is one quiet difference between them. The first person slowly allows their lifestyle to grow with every raise. A slightly nicer apartment, a newer car, a few extra conveniences. The second person does something less visible. Each time their income increases, they protect the gap between what they earn and what they spend. That gap is called margin, and over time, that small margin quietly turns into savings, investments, and financial flexibility. Because without margin, even a high income can disappear surprisingly quickly. But with margin, money slowly begins working in the background instead of constantly being spent in the present. Rule 2. Imagine someone receiving a raise after several years of hard work. Their salary increases, and for a moment it feels like real progress. Suddenly, a nicer apartment seems reasonable. A newer car feels justified. Small upgrades begin appearing everywhere. Individually, none of these choices seem dramatic, but together they quietly reshape someone's financial life. Researchers have observed something interesting about this pattern. When people's income rises, their spending often rises almost just as quickly. Over time, the extra income that once felt exciting slowly disappears into a more expensive lifestyle. Wealthy people tend to approach this moment differently. When their income grows, their lifestyle grows much more slowly. Sometimes it barely changes at all, because they understand something most people overlook. The moment income rises is also the moment when wealth can begin to grow. Rule 3. Think about the kinds of purchases that often signal success. Luxury cars, designer watches, expensive homes in prestigious neighborhoods. These purchases are designed to show other people that someone is doing well. But many wealthy people quietly think about spending in a completely different way. For example, Mark Zuckerberg became one of the youngest billionaires in history while wearing the same simple gray t-shirt almost every day. And Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he bought decades ago. Instead of constantly upgrading visible symbols of success, many wealthy people focus on something less noticeable. They spend money on things that create more time, less stress, and more flexibility in their lives. Because over the long run, time and freedom tend to be far more valuable than status. Rule 4. Imagine someone receiving their paycheck at the end of the month. For most people, the process that follows is very predictable. Bills are paid first. Then, everyday expenses begin to fill the rest of the month. Rent or mortgage, groceries, subscriptions, small purchases, and occasional upgrades to make life a little more comfortable. And if anything happens to remain at the end of the month, that leftover money might be saved or invested. The problem with this approach is that there is rarely very much left. Wealthy people often reverse this order. Instead of waiting to see what remains, they decide in advance that a portion of their income will be invested first. Before money has a chance to disappear into daily spending, part of it quietly moves into long-term investments like index funds, retirement accounts, or other assets that can grow over time. At first, the difference may look small, but year after year, those early investments begin to compound, slowly creating wealth that no paycheck alone could produce. Rule 5. In today's world, success is often expected to be visible. Social media, advertising, and everyday conversations constantly reinforce the idea that progress should be seen. A nicer car, a bigger home, more expensive habits. These signals make it look like someone is moving forward financially. But many wealthy people move in the opposite direction. Instead of showing their progress, they allow their wealth to grow quietly in the background. Their investments expand, their savings slowly increase, their financial flexibility becomes stronger each year. Very little of that progress needs to be visible to anyone else. In fact, many people who build lasting wealth often look surprisingly ordinary from the outside. They avoid the pressure to constantly prove their success because they understand something important. The real purpose of money is not to impress other people. It is to create stability, freedom, and choices over time. And those things rarely need to be announced. When people imagine wealth, they often picture dramatic breakthroughs, a perfect investment, a brilliant business idea, or a sudden leap in income. But in reality, wealth is rarely built through dramatic moments. It is usually built through quiet patterns repeated over many years. Protecting the space between income and spending, resisting the constant pressure to upgrade lifestyle, choosing flexibility over status, allowing investments to grow before money disappears into daily expenses, and keeping financial progress private rather than performing it for the outside world. Individually, none of these choices look extraordinary. In fact, they often look quite ordinary. But over time, they quietly reshape someone's financial future. Because real wealth is often invisible while it is being built. It grows slowly in the background while most people are focused on the visible signals of success. And the people who eventually build lasting financial freedom are often the ones who understand something very simple. The most powerful financial decisions are usually the quiet ones.